Hi, friends. Welcome back to the Bright Side of Beauty podcast. I'm so excited for another week. Today, I am joined by two of my very good friends in the industry. But before we jump into the episode, I have two housekeeping things. One, if you are not subscribed to us yet over on YouTube, will you please stop what you are doing and go subscribe? If you want to watch this episode, if you're listening by chance on Apple Podcast or Spotify Podcast, you can actually watch the episode over on YouTube and I guess also on Spotify. The other thing is we are now on Patreon. So if you are interested in learning more about the beauty industry, whether that is as a consumer or as a provider, I have a resource for you. Search Delaney Danielle, The Bright Side of Beauty on Patreon, and there are multiple different membership levels. So whether you are a skincare enthusiast that just wants to know more about ingredients and how you can be getting more involved with the aesthetics industry, there's an option for that. If you're a provider that wants to continue your education and wants linked to different resources that I have found or my practice has found, you can find that as well. So search Delaney Danielle, The Bright Side of Beauty on Patreon. Without further ado, let's jump into this week's episode. I am joined by two of my friends, Lauren Taylor and Isabella from the Limited Agency and Eldest daughter. And before we jump into everything, well, one, guys, they are here from Dallas, Texas in studio. Like we are in studio. We've got the giggles because we're together in the same place, which I feel like we just laugh nonstop whenever we're together.
We always have the giggles.
Yes, it's so much fun. They actually flew in because we're going to a concert tonight. And I said, okay, we have to get to the podcast studio because we have knowledge to dish out. And here we are. So let's start off. Lauren Taylor, will you tell us about how the Limited Agency came about? And then I'm sure the two of you can segue into Eldest daughter. Just tell us how you got started in the industry, I guess in the marketing industry, how that led over into aesthetics, how that branched back out of aesthetics somewhat, all the things. Just tell us all the things.
All the things. There's a lot to break down. But first, thank you so much for having us. We're so excited to be here. I love being in studio with you. So this is going to be so fun. But okay, starting the Limited Agency. So I graduated from Louisiana State University back around COVID time. I was a COVID grad. During that time, I was actually a waitress. I worked at your local walk-ons bar and grill just to make extra money while I was in school. And COVID happened, so I lost my job. And then that was the first time that I ever didn't have to have a job because I was actually getting stimulus checks because I had lost my job. So because I was getting paid, I was able to accept a free internship for the first time ever and actually get experience doing the kind of work that I wanted to be doing, which was marketing. So I got this free internship working for a local hair salon. And I actually grew that follower community from like 200 to 10,000. So I was doing a good job with her marketing. So other local businesses in Baton Rouge started reaching out to her and being like, who is doing your marketing? And she would give them my contact information. So I started taking clients of my own. I actually signed on my first ever client, $2,000 a month, like ever. I was so excited. And then by the time I graduated, I had built up such a book of clientele that it was pointless to even apply for jobs. And I said, you know what, screw it. I'm going to open my LLC. I'm going to start the Limited Agency. So I started working with all kinds of businesses, small, large, e-commerce, aesthetics, just whatever I could get my hands on at the time. And then I found my first aesthetics client, Smooth by Sarah, shout out. And she took me to AMWC in Monaco to come with her, help her film, do her Instagram. And I absolutely fell in love with the industry. I learned so much about it. I met so many people and I really got to dive in and just, watching the lectures and watching the trainings and just completely fell in love with aesthetics. So from then on, I shifted. I did kind of a 180 and the Limited Agency niched down into just doing aesthetic medicine. And we've continued to grow in that direction since then. And now I couldn't imagine doing anything else. I absolutely love it.
And you are so good at it. It makes sense why it built into a full-time job. It kind of accidentally in a way, like it just naturally.
I just love it. And so it just kind of happened.
Yes. And you are very savvy as well. You don't rely just on their creativity. I think that there are a lot of people that can put pretty things together, but you really niche down into like what the numbers are and how does that translate into dollars in the checking account for yourself, but also for your clients, of course.
Yeah, of course.
Like in a way, you're building a business to support yourself, but you were doing so by building other people's businesses.
Yeah, I think that was what I was most passionate about it. And I didn't really realize that until I got more into it. It's like, there were certain companies, even before we got into aesthetics, that we would work with, and they would come to us from, other companies or trying to do it themselves or wasting money in ad spend and all these things, and they didn't know what they were doing, and they'd be in like a hole, just a money pit of like, my marketing's not working. I'm not seeing any return on investment. And they would come to us and we would use our strategies and fix it and dig them out of that place. And to me, it felt like I was kind of like saving people's businesses, which might be dramatic to say, but like to me, it was like, that was really empowering. And that's kind of how I fell in love with it, is like when people would text me and be like, I'm not crying anymore because I'm not stressed out because now I'm making sales. And it was like, it's just an amazing feeling. So that's like a really big part of what I do now and why we do dive so deeply into analytics and we're so ROI focused because of like that point. I think that's so important. So
it is. It's so good. Okay. And how did Isabella come to be our main girl? Because she has been both of our right hands at one point or another. Let's be real.
No, I know. Okay. So I started when I was in college. I was a senior at the time. So this was 2022, 2023. And I did a summer internship like out of state. And then I was back for my senior year. And I was just like dabbling in the idea of getting an internship just for the school year. Like I didn't have to like work or anything. I always had like a part-time job. And then we found each other on Instagram, actually.
I harassed her on the internet to come and work for me, basically. She's being nice.
I am being nice. So
an Instagram
Lauren
stalker,
Taylor slid into my DMs, actually. And
I literally did.
I followed her account and I followed the limited agency because one of our mutual friends was like, you need to work for her. And I was like, yeah, okay, I'll think about it. And then she DMs me. She's like, so are you going to apply for my internship? And I was like,
well, she followed us. Well, we posted we were hiring, we were looking for interns, and she followed us and liked all our stuff and then didn't apply. So I gave her like a day or two and I was like, hey,
like, are you going to apply? Like, and then I was like, well, shoot, I guess so. And like, here's all my stuff. And then I remember I was like so nervous for our interview at this like coffee shop. And I'll never forget, like you complimented my outfit and said that I looked, you said you liked my outfit. And I was like, oh man, like this is great. So then I started as an intern and ever since then it like developed into my full-time job and now I'm here. And I always like, I feel not bad, but whenever people ask like, how did you get a job after college? I'm like, I don't know. I was literally handpicked for this. Like I have no advice to give you.
Picked her out.
I existed and here we are. That's it.
Yeah. No,
That's
quite literally.
And she just started working for us and then never left. I was like, you're coming home with me. You're going to stay.
That's the best way. And then you moved from Baton Rouge to Dallas together.
Yes.
Well, did you move first?
So
and
I
then
went
you moved
first just to kind of test that. We were probably about 6 months apart, but we had started our business in Baton Rouge and all of our clients were in like Baton Rouge, New Orleans, like surrounding areas in Louisiana. And then we would do a couple shoots like out of state, but then getting into aesthetics, I realized so many of the medical grade skincare companies, and I don't know if I can say any of their names.
You can. Yeah. You're fine.
Game by Galderma. Like a lot of my clients at the time were Galderma trainers. So like I was just familiar with it and I knew that they were all based in Dallas. So every time there was a conference or a dinner that I would be invited to, it was always in Dallas. And I was like, I would get hired for so many more things, or my agency would if I was local. So we picked up and we moved. I tested the waters for about 6 months and then I
came shortly after.
Yes.
And I said, that looks like fun. I'll come.
I love it so much. So because you went to LSU, we are both Joe Burrow fans, of course, because, you know, you've got the Ohio and you've got the LSU kind of blend together. So I feel like I have to throw that out there just in general. We've got to put that out there.
I graduated when Joy B won the Natty. I'll just leave that there.
Yes.
It was a great year for football.
Not that, you know, Ohio's bitter about that at all. That's fine. But here we are. Okay. We can move right back to marketing at this point. I just had to say that part because that's a bonding moment for us.
I love it.
But you two brought us the Bright Side of Beauty podcast. So I had this idea and you helped me basically make it a thing. And really, Isabella, you were the one that were like, okay, this is what we're going to do. Now we need to create this. Okay, do you care if I just create this and I'll just like make it the same as like your other login? And you held my hand and made me into the brand that is the Bright Side of Beauty. And here we are. I'm so glad that you're here today so that we can talk a little bit about marketing. And truthfully, I feel like this is going to be a multi-part series. And because I have you in person, we're gonna do all the things today. Let's start off with, I feel like something that definitely we struggle with as a practice with Beyond Skin Aesthetics, and then also me having the Bright Side of Beauty, and then of course like my own like speaking and everything. There's a difference between what you do for a practice versus a personal brand. I am of the belief that you cannot be a provider without having a personal brand in today's market. What's your opinions on that? Do you think that it can be separate? Do you feel like it has to be together?
We both are like,
And here we go. We're diving in.
I think there's a timeline. Like a lot of times it just depends like where you're at as a business, or if you're a solo SD or solo injector, whatever you're doing, or if you have like a thriving practice already. Like people kind of start at different points. I feel like most often when we work with people, they start out as single injectors. Like we have a few of those, and then they build out into growing through social media, through their personal brand and their business in one. And then we get to a point where based on what their goals are for that year, we're like, okay, I think it's time to separate. And it just kind of aligns better because when you're first starting out, I feel like the most important thing is just visibility, like getting eyes on your brand so you can actually start making money through your services and what you're doing. But
there's just different strategies that go into personal brands and practices. Like we were talking about this kind of earlier when we were going over like Skin by Delaney versus BSA. Like with Skin by Delaney, there's a person behind that brand, but with BSA, there's a whole team. So there's a bunch of different parts of the business that you want to highlight. Whereas like you as a provider, like we are highlighting everything about you. And it's just, it's a great point. Same, but different. The way that you market it and the way that you communicate things and in like what you show. Because also with your personal brand, you show personality. That's the whole point of a personal brand, is so people can go on that like deeper level. But with the business, it's a little more like business personality as a whole, if that makes any sense.
Like branding.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Where do you feel like practice pages, so like business pages, fail? Where do you feel like their shortcomings are, where they need an overhaul to get their reach back up or to get it to convert into actual people walking through their door versus just blindly posting?
Not being adaptable. I think adaptability is everything. You can't just really like pick a strategy and stick with it forever and think that that's going to continue to work. Just the nature of digital marketing as a whole is like, it is constantly changing. There's a new feature on a different social media app that drops every day, and you have to be making changes and using those things. And maybe the strategy that you had planned to do for your rollout of your marketing campaign for next month, like it completely changes based on the new algorithm and platform updates. And you just have to be willing to be flexible. And I think a lot of people aren't, because people can view it as just like kind of a checkbox, like, oh, my marketing check, someone posted for me and that's good enough. And if that's all you need and you already have a thriving practice, like that can work for you and that's amazing. But if your goal is to, bring in more patients, then you have to be willing to be flexible and constantly adjust that strategy to figure out what it is that's going to help the practice thrive.
Absolutely. Do you have anything you want to add to that?
No, just agreeing with it, because I also think that different kinds of posts resonate at different times. Like there could be a period of time where all of your like quote unquote like educational like examples of your work are performing really well, and then people might get bored of that and they want to see more entertainment like this quarter. And it just really fluctuates like with your audience and just the ever-changing nature of social media. Like you were saying, it's always changing and you always have to adapt what you're posting, how you're posting it, and just you adapt to survive basically.
What I'm hearing is you have to know what your insights are. You have to be looking at what trends are, what your insights are, and follow your audience, because what's working for one person or one audience isn't going to be the same for, the next business over, even on the same street. Even if you're in the same area, you're going to have like different people following. Would you say that that's pretty true?
Honestly, yes. And we were kind of talking about this on the plane as well. So we can dive into this later, but we both also have individual personal brands on social media, and we are trying to grow those as well. So we were talking about like niches and what you need to post and everything. And there's a whole narrative where it's like social media is for you, post what you want. Like this is your creative outlet. But a hot take is like your social media as a business is also for your followers. So you have to post what resonates with them. And that might not be the same as what's resonating for the business down the street. Like you might be two med spas and one business is posting this and it's resonating for their followers, but you need to be posting this because this is what your followers and your patients want to see. So it's a very selfless act, especially when you are a business trying to grow.
Girl, that was such a mic drop.
That was so good.
That is, and it's so true. You have to be thinking about your patient. You have to be thinking about your business first. You can't just be posting what your passion is that week, especially if you are somebody that is constantly changing your mind and getting your inspiration different places. Yeah. I think a lot of entrepreneurial spirits are like that. We're constantly looking ahead at the next thing. And if your audience isn't caught up to what you're excited about and you're posting about what you're excited about this week, it's just, shooting into the wind.
I think it's okay to be multi-passionate on social media. just as long as your baseline remains the same, like as long as you know who you are or who your business is and like what that really means and what makes you different as a business or you different as a personal brand, and like really diving like oceans deep into that and figuring what that is. If that baseline stays there, then you can pull inspiration other places. Because like my personal brand, I really struggle with this. Obviously our limited agency page is very limited agency focused, but my personal brand, like I have a lot of things that I'm interested in. Like I'm obviously an entrepreneur. I own a business. I love fashion and I love mental health and giving advice and stuff like that. And it's hard to kind of tie all those elements together. So something that's been an interesting challenge for me is figuring out how that works when you're dealing with personal brand, is figuring out what pieces of yourself you want to highlight. And if you want to do more than one of them, how you can kind of tie them together through, content pillars, or I like to call them umbrellas, like just different sections that kind of mesh together into one.
I love that segue because I think that's something that a lot of people struggle with is deciding what to post and when to post it and being able to niche down, because you need to focus on certain things. So you don't want to focus on just one thing and pigeonhole yourself. So you want to brand yourself, of course, as the expert and show all of your services. But if you do 80 services, I'm making this up, that's a lot to be able to cover, and you're never going to be able to cover all of it. So how do you guide your clients or people that are looking to you for advice as experts in the industry on what to post and how to decide what those umbrellas are?
There's a couple different ways. So basically, whenever we first get a client or somebody asks us for the first time, like, what do we post? And we're kind of building out that strategy for them. We will look internally at them, simultaneously looking externally. So what I mean by that is we'll look at their analytics and what they've posted so far to see what type of content resonates with them and their audience already. Because I mean, if it's not broke, don't fix it too. So like if there's something that's successful on their page, like we will take note of that and then incorporate it into their strategy moving forward. And then also we'll look at the market as a whole. So if we're working with a new injector, we'll look at all other injectors on social media and see like what people are kind of posting right now and build it out from there and find like inspiration and see what resonates with that potential new client.
And I think, like that is kind of the process when we start onboarding someone, is like doing a deep dive of like kind of like a SWOT analysis. Those who are in marketing will know what that is. And we really like dive into that. And also we'll ask the injector or the med spa owner, whoever we're working with, like, give us some accounts that you like. Like I tell people, find an account that you like the way that the feed looks. Like number one, not necessarily the content, but like when you go to the feed, you think it's pretty and it looks a way that you want yours to look, whether that's luxurious or super graphic heavy, or you hate graphics and you want it to be all photo covers. Like find some inspo for that. And then next we'll go like, okay, style content, and we'll find like some inspo there just to kind of give us an idea of maybe people that match the vibe that we're trying to implement for that person. And then also like during that onboarding process, actually meeting that person and like helping them figure out, kind of bird's eye viewing them, if that makes sense. Because I feel like it's hard for me to know so much about myself, whereas like you two could probably look at me and be like, oh, you need to do this. Like you're like this. And people don't see those things about themselves sometimes. So I think us coming in and being like, pulling out those things that make someone different, especially because we work with so many, is really helpful.
Where do you feel like the best place is to find inspiration, whether it's on what's trending or to, find those accounts that you like? I feel like we all have those like couple of accounts, but do you have advice for anybody that's like, okay, but where can I even find inspiration at?
I would say, so trends are sticky because trends come and go.
Yes.
So I think that if you instead of finding a trend, you find a style that you like.
Yes.
I think that is a great way to look at inspiration. And honestly, I mean, there are so many creators in any niche or industry that you can think of, just, doing some research on TikTok, on Instagram, and anywhere that you find people that resonate with your style. I think that would be a great place to start.
Something that we are currently addressing with ourselves is I feel like there's like an ebb and flow of marketing your business. And as your business changes and grows and maybe even like shrinks back before it grows again, because sometimes you do have to like pull back, refine, and then you launch something in like a brand new way that's even bigger than your original business was. As you're doing all of those things, you can get distracted and almost like lose yourself as a practice, where you're the way that you're portraying yourself to your community to attract more people that are your ideal client gets lost in the fray of everything. And that's something that as a practice we're currently working on, and something that we're even bringing our marketing back in-house. We're really basically holding our own hands through launching that. What would you say to the practice that feels like they're losing their personality on their page, or maybe they have multiple different personalities within their practice that they're trying to showcase? What's the best way for them to show their personalities while still staying a business, not becoming like 8 personal brands on one page? Do you know what I mean by that? Where it just gets like very muddled.
Yeah, I think so, especially when you have like bigger teams and there's a lot of different personalities. I think just making sure you always have that distinction between the personal brands and the business pages. So like the styles of content that you post is going to be a little bit different. So like for the personal brand, it's going to dive really deep into the individual personalities and everything. Whereas on the business page, it's probably going to be a little bit more of showcasing your work and doing educational style posts. And then there's like a personality here and there, but focusing on the team as a whole and the business as a whole. And that can be completely separate than the provider's personality, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say too, is like just focusing on like the personality as a unit instead of like individually, because it's okay to highlight certain individuals. But I think like imagine a day in your life when you wake up and go to work. Okay, what is everyone acting like? Like what is the banter between you and Katie or whoever, you know, like capturing some of that or finding ways to draw your content back to that and like who you actually are is important.
And I think a good example of that too is like honestly our limited agency page, because our personalities are very different. But then the limited agency has its own personality that's kind of like a blend, but it's also like completely its own thing.
She calls it corporate. It's like, it's so corporate.
We're so business. Whereas like our personalities like online are not corporate, you know? So it's just like having that separation, but then being able to translate it into all of your providers having their personalities, but then on the business page, it kind of like blends into
like
one.
The business has its own.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
And that doesn't have to be the personality of like the owner of the business. Like the business has to be its own thing. And the owner, that's why the owner needs their own personal brand page.
Spot on. Okay, so I feel like that goes right back to my opinion, which is that you can't really be a provider in today's world without having some sort of personal brand, even if you don't have your own brand page necessarily. But like people, when you think about like how people reach you, social media might not be like their first stop on, you know, the pipeline of finding you, but it's typically, honestly, I feel like I might be quoting you here. You might have taught me this. It might not be the first time, but it's typically the last stop.
Aesthetic Next, I think.
Did you?
I think so.
That might have been. But it's so true, because as a consumer, you think about like your own habits. I do it. I might find a company because I'm driving past it, but then what's the first thing that I do? Pull it up on Instagram, and I want to do a deep dive, and I want to know exactly who they are and what I'm getting into, and I almost like decide what I'm going to do or what I'm comfortable with before I even pick up the phone to call them, or I send in like the request virtually or whatever it may be. I feel like that's very important, that like you have to be present on social media in some way. I don't even know how I want to.
To what you're saying, I think social media might not be the first place that they find you, but I find that it's almost always the closer, if that makes sense. So say people find you on Google, they're not just going to book with you on Google just by looking at your website once. They're then going to look at you on TikTok and maybe on Instagram, or they're going to go read your Google reviews, or all these different avenues that they can make. It's called, Google references this in a study that they did. It's called the messy middle model. And it takes you through all the messy, complex digital touch points that happen through the buyer's journey, or in this case, the patient journey, and kind of where they go. And it's almost always social media is the last one. So it's like they could be sold on your services. They know that they want your services and they found them on your website, or they read that you're great, but they're not going to actually book the appointment until they learn that they resonate with you and they like you and they trust you. And so that's why I think even if you're, the owner of the clinic or just a provider at a clinic, it's so important to have personal brands for those reasons so that you can give people the opportunity to learn to trust you. It puts you in a really good position to establish yourself as the expert and like build your own credibility. Like that's what's so cool about social media and Instagram is it gives everyone a platform to build their own portfolio that's public that everyone can look at all times. So that's why it's so important and incredible for business.
Yeah, even if it's within a business, I feel like that's important for providers, even if you're not a solo injector or solo esthetician out there, that you can shine within a business and gain that trust. And I think that a really, not to turn a company competitive or providers competitive within one company, but you can look at the providers that are booked out at a business versus the ones that aren't. And I bet you if you looked at the stats, I'm going to say 90% of the time, the providers that are completely booked out are the people that are either they have a personal brand on social media, they're showing up on maybe the business's brand, but they're out there in the community making a name for themselves and their books show it because people trust them. And somebody might trust the business, but if they don't trust the provider, they're going to go with, whoever they trust the most. So it doesn't necessarily mean that like if your business has a good name, your books are going to be filled as the provider.
Mm-hmm. No, I completely agree with that also too, because if you're showing up online, you're already bridging the gap of trust because like you were saying, you can trust the business, but your patients, if you're not posting online, like your patients aren't going to know you or trust you until they book the appointment and meet you in person. Whereas if you're posting online, you're already establishing that trust that is going to make them then book the appointment and then talk to you even more. So it's just higher chances of getting those appointments booked if you were establishing that trust online because your reach is exponentially higher than it would be if you just expect your patients to meet you in person for the first time.
I know a lot of clinics that we've worked with. That encourage or even make it mandatory for the injectors that work at their clinic to have social media and to post regularly on social media. Like they'll literally put it in their contract. And there's certain clauses about like you have to collaborate certain things with the business page. It has to have, Delaney at .bsa or Isabella .limited agency, like have something like that. And people are always hesitant to do that because they're like, okay, well, right now maybe I'm renting a space in this clinic or I don't, so there's a lot of kind of tug and back and forth about that. But what people don't realize is you can change your name. So if you are a solo injector or you have goals of like branching out and doing your own thing later and you're working at a clinic for the time being, like you can it's still beneficial to you to make the account under the business name and build trust there because it gives you kind of a starting point. It just builds a resume for you. And then later when you do decide to start your own thing, or even if you go somewhere else or you have to move, whatever the situation is, you don't have to start over. You can just change the name and then it'll still be obvious that those posts were collaborated with that business because they stay there. That's in their contract. They can't like remove it all after they leave or claim it was all theirs because the business is a lot of times helping the newer injector bring in those clients. That's just a good way to help.
That's a really good point. Something that you are both very passionate about at the Limited Agency is making sure that your social media is actually turning into sales. It's not just posting and having fun with it. That's of course very important and very fun, and it can be a creative outlet to Isabella's point, but it needs to be turning into sales. So how do you do that? I'm gonna leave it so broad.
It's so fun.
Let's dive in.
It's a lot of deep diving into patient portals and doing like real raw marketing analysis. That's what people forget about social media is they think, oh, it's social media. I know how to do social media. I can just post. Like I know how to post on Instagram. Yeah. It's marketing. Like it's digital marketing. You have to know strategy. You have to understand marketing as a whole to be able to look at these numbers and calculate like where things are coming from, the way things are moving, percentage of increase in certain areas. Like when we do it, we don't use any like systems like that because we haven't found ones that work. We're like manually diving into patient portals and drawing parallels between, we were posting about Nefertiti neck lifts this month. Like that was what we were really pushing. And then these people started coming in and then we made these upsells in this area and we correlate those to specific dates, specific posts. And then we use all of that data when we're making the upcoming month's calendar to kind of shift our strategy. So that's kind of what we mean when we talk about adaptability is using those analytics and using our marketing brains to take that and kind of run with it so that we're constantly like being flexible and changing and using that data to move forward and get better and keep growing.
What do you think, how far in advance do you think is too far to plan out your content? Do you feel like there's a number?
Don't go more than a month. I hate to say it.
Yeah.
What were you going to say?
I was going to say month. And I also think it depends on what you're posting. Because obviously, like at a med spa, for example, like you're going to be posting examples of your work all the time. So like those, if you have like before and afters in bulk, like you can plan them out because before and afters, but keep it flexible. Like you were saying with the Nefertiti lifts, like you can post the Nefertiti lifts, and then if everyone's coming in, like keep posting them. Like if you have them on hand, because you want to obviously like do what's resonating with your patients and everything. But
ride the wave.
Yeah, I see what you're saying. Not necessarily don't use old content. Just like don't make all of your content and think you're done for 6 months. Like we use old before and afters all the time. Like, because we have some people that we work with that never send us content. We're like knocking on their door, please give us the before and afters. So we'll literally use some from like 3 years ago. Honestly,
Isabella was like, please,
you'd be
give me some before and afters.
You were angelic. You'd be surprised. But it's fine because like that is why we come in and we content batch and we get so much content. But we're not like pre-making it all. We have all the raw stuff like saved and organized in folders so that we know like, okay, this month we want to start pushing lip filler again. We know that we have a folder of that. Maybe if we don't have anything fresh, we can use this, but we can use it in a different way. I think it's like what you're trying to say is like shifting it to like maybe a new trend, but we can still use old pieces to incorporate there. And that's the part that's hard about what we do is like being creative enough to take the most random videos and photos and actually like build it into something that's makes sense with your strategy and actually going to convert.
Yeah. And I also think that obviously just including like pop culture and holidays and everything, it's so hard to plan for those things in advance. Like obviously the holidays are coming up. So a lot of content is going to be like holiday centric, but like something could happen in pop culture that like everybody wants to talk about, or like a new thing in aesthetics could come out that's brand new and everybody wants to share their opinion on it, or everyone gets a new machine in their clinic that they want to post about. Like you have to be flexible and be willing to adjust your strategy and adjust what you post, because social media is always changing, but so is the aesthetics industry.
Oh my gosh. Yes. Regulations are always changing the same way as like maybe you get a brand new device that you weren't expecting that you were going to get. Maybe half of your line of business goes out the door because regulations changed and all of a sudden big pharma now controls it. Hello, GLP-1s. That happened to the entire industry. 1 week, you were able to advertise it. The very next week, you couldn't even offer it inside of your practice. What if you had batched out 6 months worth of content because you were, racking in the dough on your wellness business? That's something that I was thanking the good Lord for with ourselves, of that we were not so pigeonholed into one line of success. We were so diversified that specifically didn't, necessarily impact us. But I'm sure that all of us, you as the listener, you're probably thinking of a practice right now that happened to. All of a sudden their business completely went away overnight because they were just riding that one solo lane. And that definitely reflects into marketing as well, because maybe the inside of your practice wasn't as pigeonholed. You were pretty diversified, but your social media was very pigeonholed. And then you lose 6 months worth of content from it or 3 months worth of content from it. I would agree. I feel like 1 month is pretty good. And us as people, we change a lot too. And that I feel like you've got to roll too, so that you're excited about what you're posting or what's showing up on your feed too.
The last thing I'll add to that is be prepared to like create things and then change them. Because like we have worked with people who things have changed in the industry, and they by their decision, they were very pigeonholed just in the services that they offered. And then when those things did go away, it was like this panic of like, what am I going to do? And luckily, we had enough variety in our B-roll that we were able to continue posting about other things. We had to remake our entire calendar, and we do that because we are flexible when things happen. But because we had content batched the right things, maybe that weren't in alignment with that one pigeonhole area, we were able to use those videos and just change some words on it or change some edits and make it still usable for the next few months while we figure out what the heck is going on,
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, I feel like this is a great place to say see you next week for an episode, because I think we can really dive into what platforms we should be posting on, and then also how to plan out content in a way that is ever evolving. Like Isabella was saying of like, okay, maybe you can batch your before and afters, how to have your B-roll ready to go. We could talk about what we're doing at BSA this week too. We'll do all of those things. So before we go though, I don't know if I prepped you. I don't think I prepped you guys for this.
That's okay.
At all. We're going to be rolling with it.
Let's hear it.
Since I know we're at least doing 2 episodes, since we're going to break now and then do a separate one, diving into all of that I just mentioned, I will start. Well, I guess one of you can just pick whoever has an answer and feels prepared for it. I like
scared
to ask all of my guests the same question. Well, I think you both know this because you've edited my podcast before, so you should know. I like to ask all of my guests the same question, which is, what is beautiful to you? And that can be something that is in a literal sense. It can be in a spiritual sense. It can be anything that you want. But what is something that is beautiful to you?
Okay, so I think that this kind of ties into what we've been talking about this whole episode. And this is a hot take, think that change is beautiful. I also think that change is so terrifying. But I say that it's beautiful because you can almost feel, especially us as people, when we are changing, you can kind of feel the change happening when you're like growing out of a chapter, or you're leveling up, or you're like finally getting the thing that you've dreamed about, like the job, the house, the person. Like you can feel that change happening. And I think that is really beautiful. And I also just like, we've been talking about change this whole episode with like social media and the aesthetics and just everything evolving into what it's meant to be. I think all of that just like coming into fruition is really beautiful.
Oh my gosh, I have chills.
That was so good.
That was really good.
I love that.
You communicated that so well too. Like that was so articulate to the point where I actually got chills from it because I started thinking about, I think all of us probably just thought about our lives and when we have felt that change start to happen, whether it's like, okay, I can feel something really good coming, or maybe it's, no, I'm not meant to be in this spot anymore. I think that there's something new for me out there. And that's scary to make that jump. But I think we've all felt that feeling before. And it's so beautiful and welcoming. And that was so good. Go, Isabella. You were really good on the spot there.
Thank you.
That was really good.
She practiced this before. There's no way.
It was all of those episodes that she edited for me. She was like, I've had this in my
I've had this energy for years.
Yes. Yeah, it's been a year and a half of just sitting here ready for this question. I love it. Well, girls, thank you so much for joining me today. Before we wrap up this episode completely, drop your personal Instagrams as well as then, of course, the businesses. I guess we didn't really talk about Eldest Daughter. So we'll talk about Eldest Daughter in the next episode too, and that sort of funness. But drop how people can reach you, how people can work with you, and then we'll pick this up next week.
You can go first. You got it.
Okay, well, you guys can follow us on Instagram and TikTok. It's at The Limited Agency, all one word. That is where we post the most on those 2 platforms. We have Facebook as well, also The Limited Agency. And then my personal brand is Lauren Taylor Dijon, all my name, all lowercase one word. So you can keep up with me there. And then I have a TikTok as well, which is kind of personal and work combined into one. Also, LaurenTaylor. So follow me there.
Yes, and then my personal is Isabella_Latuso, and that's where you'll find my personal brand. So,
and of course, we will link all of this down in the show notes as well. I cannot thank you enough for joining today, giving us some of your knowledge. I can't wait to see where next week's episode takes us.
Thank you for having us.
Absolutely.
So much fun.
We'll see you next week on the Bright Side of Beauty podcast.